What is Old British German? In this video, I'll dive right into this proposed dialect group. Alright, let's dive right in. The term Old British German was inspired by my study and the name label, if you will, of Old High German, and by the historical linguists such as Eduard Sievers, Wilhelm Heuser, and Lionel Armitage. So this term Old British German that I coined, so to speak, is geographical. Just as High in Old High German is geographical, so is British. Right? And the term German applied here is used very loosely. So take German here synonymous with, let's say, Teutonic, synonymous with Germanic, right? I'm gonna have to ask the audience here watching this to kind of like not think in terms of like German as we know it, like sort of today, if that makes sense, whatnot. So the term German here is applied very loosely. For those of you who are not so familiar with historical linguistics, Old High German is a West Germanic dialect group consisting of Old High Frankish, that of itself is a group, a lower group or subgroup, if you will, Old Alemannic and Old Bavarian. As well, in relation to this proposed dialect group that I'm discussing in this video, Old Low German, another West Germanic dialect group consisting of Old Frisian, Old Saxon, and Old Low Frankish. As for Old British German, a West Germanic dialect group consisting of Old English, and that of itself is a group consisting of two dialects of Mercian and Northumbrian. Then we have the famous Old West Saxon, the language of King Alfred, and then we have Old Kentish, whatnot. So these are the three main dialects, if you will, under this proposed label of Old British German. I would argue that this term, this label, Old British German, would also include unattested Germanic speakers of Britannia. We have to bear in mind that the term Old English was coined by Henry Sweet. The issue with Old English, it's too narrow, and this term is only used within the context of like the development of modern English and historical phonology and historical linguistics. Right, so of course, what I'm doing isn't within the context of historical linguistics, but it's sort of a broadened view where this is very narrow. And the thing is, with labels like Old English and by extension Old Dutch, well, with Old Dutch, I mean, like there's a notion there of like, how can I word it? It has some nation-state nationalism involved and whatnot, and it's not. And the issue with that is not accurate to what was like called back then, or accurate to describe. There we go. Accurate to describe what was going on back then, because something like Old Dutch, though somewhat accurate but not fully accurate to what people. Well, I shouldn't say what called themselves, but it's more generalized view of a view. Whereas if you were to say, for example, Old North Frankish would be more accurate to that would be a term superior to Old Dutch, because that reflects more with the period rather than Old Dutch, because Old Dutch is sort of, though accurate but not as accurate as, let's say, Old North Frankish. But anyway, that's a tangent on its own, but let's move on. So with Old British German, we have the term in what most would call Old English, þēodisc, and þēod means people, generally, but really specifically a nation, as in like a tribe, like the nation of the Almani, the nation of the Iroquois, the nation of this and that people. But þēodisc and þēod, this is very specifically like talking about Germanic people, a Germanic tribe, if you will. We see this by the writer Otfrid in his preface to his Gospel Harmony. And this is an interesting text of itself because he sort of complains about translating the Gospels into German or in Frankish and whatnot. So, but the interesting thing here is that the Latin here, to used for German here is þēodisc, which, pardon me, þēodisc. Yeah, þēodisc. Something along the lines of that. Presumably this would be a Latin speaker or Latin educated person, applying the sound inventory to what would be a Germanic word, Anyway, but so yeah, we have this term here used for German, þēodisc, which is a cognate to þēodisc, and then, but as an aside, we also have this term Frankish from this text as well, so the Frankische, whatnot. So there is a distinction between German and Frankish here. The distinction being, well, given what þēodisc means, whatnot, meaning the people, the Germanic people, in this context would be sort of a broadened term, whereas when you say Frankish, it's more specific, right, to a particular tribe and whatnot. So we have the general, we have the more specific. Similarly, with þēodisc, meaning like sort of like the general term, and then when you get to, like, let's say English, or Old West Saxon or Old Kentish, then you're starting to get more specific, right? So something to bear in mind. Now, the term Anglo-Saxon, though accurate, and people of this time did refer to the people in England as Anglo-Saxons, and I will show that was the case in a bit. But it's accurate, but it's incomplete and oversimplified, and leaves out other Germanic speakers, such as the Kentings and other groups, though their speech is unattested. But through the label of Old British German and knowing what was like kind of common, throughout all the Germanic languages, if you will, or dialects of the West Germanic language, we can have a good guess of like what a Germanic tribe would have spoken in ancient times in England. Well, not England, but Britannia, though their texts are unattested. But moving on. So we have this excerpt here from the Deeds of the Saxons by Widukindus Corbeius from the 10th century. And this is just to show that the Anglo-Saxons were called Anglo-Saxons at this time. Angli-Saxones usque hodie vocitantur. Forgive me for my bad Latin, but yeah, so even back then. And for those who don't know, a Widukindus is a continental Saxon, if that makes sense. So I believe so. Anyway, I could be wrong about that, but anyway. So moving on to more þēodisc. This is from the Anglo-Saxon Dictionary online. Bosworth Toller, great one. So we have þēodisc here, and this is an adjectival form of the term þēod. This again belonging to a people and whatnot. So, but the thing is, within Old English, for the sake of convenience, I'll say Old English. There are many words that denote like people in general, but this is a very specific word to mean people. I mean, of course, depending on its context, but. So yeah, we have here þēodisc, also meaning a language, just as today we have Deutsch, which is also a language, also a way of just saying people. But then we have in Dutch, I'm probably going to get this wrong if I dare try, but the English or the Anglic or English cognate to this would be þēodisc. Or þēodisc, I'm not too sure, but definitely þēodisc would be a way to pronounce it. But so this is all referring to the people, and but to be very specific, the Germanic people or the German people, right? So this is sort of like a broadening term and whatnot. So in conclusion, Old British German is a proposed dialect group of Old English, and that of itself is a small group, Old West Saxon and Old Kentish, and this proposed dialect group is inclusive to all Germanic speakers of Britannia, attested and unattested, because Old British German is of itself is a variant, if you will, of Proto-West Germanic. Yeah, so that's the thing when you study Old High German, Old Saxon, well, the dialects of Old High German actually, you begin to realize that what makes a dialect is, well, of course, the choice of words, Latin loans or what have you, but also how a word and its vowels or whatnot change over time or haven't changed over time, and you start to realize they're variants of the same language. So similarly with Old British German, when you study these dialects, that they're variations of the same thing. So and they only, what makes them different is like kind of like where they were spoken, what area and whatnot. So and how much Latin influence was there, and whatnot. So yeah, as well, just to repeat again, that Old English is too contextual in relation to the development of present English, or dare I say present þēodisc. Anglo-Saxon, on the other hand, is accurate but incomplete. It's not, to call it Anglo-Saxon is not wrong. It's accurate but not complete. So old British German, again, British here is used as a geographical term, much like High and Old High German, and German here is very used. It's very used loosely here. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I just want to, I've had this idea for this video for quite a while and whatnot, to see what people think, whatnot. Especially I want to hear from other historical linguists about this and whatnot. But this idea of itself is just a thought experiment, inspired by my studies in Old High German dialects. Right. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new, and if you really like the channel, please become a patron at my Patreon page down below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.